Hello, this is Malorian, and this is the Orc Tactical Team, and now this will be our second video on the new Empire book, and what we're going to touch on today is the special characters. So there's some old goodies and there's also some new ones, so let's just kind of go over it. Very first one, of course, we have the Emperor. He's here, he's a ton of points, and he's pretty much still the same thing. He's just a guy that has leadership 10, which is fairly nice, and has it on a big bubble, so 18 inches. It's pretty nice. Now they make it so that if he actually is on one of the large ones, it even goes up to 24. And of course you can get the better Rune Fang where it does D3 wounds. Now the thing about this guy is it's just so many points, and he's actually pretty hard to keep safe as well, because of his offensive abilities. You kind of want to move him forward, but he only has a 4+ armor, a 4+ ward, and that dies fairly easy. If you put him on one of his mounts, he's probably going to take a cannon to the face, and so unless you're running some sort of knight unit that you can put him in and then mount him for at least a 2+ save, he's going to be a little bit of a liability. I mean, he's just a super high price tag. So really where he might come in is if you're playing some fairly large game. He also has Hold the Line, which might help if you're going with infantry, but it's just, when you look at it, we have a banner for 15 points that you can make a guy a leadership 10, so the leadership isn't all that great. As far as the bubble goes, if really what you're having isn't big enough to cover, going with some cheaper Lord level characters, or just making sure that your flank units are things that don't really need any sort of leadership help, is probably a better way to go than with Karl Franz. He's really just going to be for that theme style larger point game, and if nothing else, it's just nice to have that option. Then we have Kurt Helborg. Now when I first saw Kurt, I kind of thought he was garbage. You know, you look at his things like Laurels of Victory, and they just don't mean anything anymore very much in 8th, and so I was going to go glaze him over and say, well, he's just too expensive. And he is very expensive. He's only 20 points cheaper than Karl Franz, which is halfway between 300 and 400, so he's pretty pricey. But then I started breaking him down a little bit more, and a big thing that made me like him was just seeing the different options of making him work with that stubborn. So of course he has his Rune Fang, he's also stubborn, he has his good old Laurels of Victory for fun, and if you compare him again to the Grand Master and add in basically having the Rune Fang, having basically the Crown of Command, he has the one better weapon skill, all of a sudden he starts working to kind of an assassin general. So what you could do with a guy like this is start him off with a unit of knights, and then all of a sudden if you have something you're really worried about, you can then just slam him and his unit into them, and he can just be giving his leadership from that advanced position while slowly attacking the unit. Now what you're probably going to do is, because if you're just doing that, it's probably going to be a situation where you're just throwing him in to tie it up, right, the whole unit. So there might be a big huge evil horde, and inside what he'll really be aiming for is one with a character, because then he can challenge or move over and just make sure to engage these characters, and with this higher weapon skill and with this Rune Fang, he should be able to kill them off, and then being stubborn, he can stay there forever, especially with Lore Life keeping him fully healed if he ever gets hurt. So there is some tactical use to him, but again, he's so many points that it's probably best just to do it some other way. You never really want to risk your general if you don't have to, especially with an army like Empire that really doesn't have super high leadership everywhere. So I can see some reasoning to this, but again, it's one of those things that's kind of super risky if you're not overly careful. Balthasar Gelt, you know, having this guy that's flying around on a Pegasus, it's just asking for trouble. I mean, sure, he has a 3+ ward, but that means that 1/3 of the time, whenever you get cranked with a cannonball, you're done for. So, really not a fan of him. Of course, being a lore master with metal is pretty nice, and if you're running into some of these new kind of monster units, say like Mournfang, he can go and melt them pretty easily, but overall, again, it's just very risky, lots of points. He's even more than Karl Franz on foot, and it's just too many for my liking. Then we get on to Volkmar the Grim, and this guy here, he's just kind of not very impressive. I mean, you compare him, he's obviously an arts lector, and really what you're getting for this 90-point difference is not very much. You know, he has basically a great weapon. He gets +1 to his prayers, and it's just not very much. You know, the big thing that you're getting with him is not the ability to pick and choose the better items that you probably do want to take with your arch lector if you are taking them, especially if you're doing one on top of the war altar. So really not a fan there. He's just uninspired, I think, and maybe if you're doing a theme, take him, but otherwise don't really like it. Now we get on to one of the new guys, and this guy is Marius Leitdorf. Sorry if I'm saying him wrong, but this guy is just wacky. And the thing is that you look at him and you almost think that they put him in the wrong book, because this guy really strongly seems like an orc and goblin character. What you do with this guy is at the start of every turn you take a leadership test on 3d6, and of course the average of 3d6 is 10.5. He's leadership 9, so that means the majority of the time he's going to fail. When you fail, you then go and consult the table. So you roll a dice, look to see what happens, and this is ranging anywhere from him having stupidity to having frenzy, man, to let everything reform. And that's a really nice thing. Everything within a foot gets to automatically reform, which could open up some interesting charge options and stuff like that. He can make his unit stubborn and all this stuff, but it's just too random. It's just something you could never really base it on. He already is quite a few points, and it's just one of those things where if he was an Orc and Goblin book, I could probably see him being used just because people like to do it for fun. But in an Empire army where usually you're looking for stability and control and all these things, he just seems completely out of place. So there goes all of our Lord special characters, and of course we're seeing almost failing grades on all of them. The only one that has a slightly passing mark is a maybe on Kurt Helborg. Then going on to the heroes, we just got the few there. So the first one is we have Ludwig Schwarzhelm, or whatever you say his name. He's the guy with this BSB with a huge mustache. Now, if you're a person that are having huge leadership issues and you're thinking maybe I should go with the Emperor, well, maybe this BSB is a better way to go, because usually your BSB is fairly useless. He's not doing anything except for sitting in the back. And for this guy, for a few extra points, what at least you're getting is the whole thing where his BSB range is farther expanded, and at least he's a little bit of a better fighter. He has a killing blow sword and all that stuff, and you know, he's not so bad. So if you are having leadership issues and you're trying to find a cheaper and safer way to do it without going to the Emperor because you want to take your Lord and do something else with your Lord, he'd be your way to go. So he's actually not too bad, and he's not overly expensive. The only thing that is going to be difficult with him is that, unlike most BSBs, which are probably going to be on foot, he's actually on a barded horse. And so what you're probably going to look at if you're going to be working this into your army is you're probably going to be having a bunker of the Outriders. Because of course Outriders just really don't want to park somewhere and shoot with their repeater handguns, and so that's just a great place for a guy like him to be sitting at. And of course if you ever need to ditch and get out of there, he's with his nice little fast unit and off they go. Next one they have is Luther Huss, and again, it's one of these things where he's an oldie but goodie character that's been around for a long time, but he just doesn't really have anything that makes him overly special. He's getting his free 4+ ward, which is a nice thing. Once per game, he's able to harness this power, and basically you just roll a d3 and you add this to your weapon skill, strength, and toughness. And now this is new, and this is interesting, and they're like, okay, this is great. I can send him in here, and he seems like an assassin, right? It's like kind of like one of these potions that you drink and he gets really powerful. The problem, though, is that he is a warrior priest, and he only has 2 attacks. So really, unless you're trying to assassinate some sort of hero and you'd have to fail nothing, then maybe you can pull him off, but obviously there's better ways to try and do it. And so he is a fair amount of points. He does come on a barded warhorse, so again you have to kind of work the knights into your list. If you have knights already, then that's not really a drawback, but it's something where it's nice where they made him different and a little, not just the plain old guy he used to be, but it's still nothing great. Now he does have another one too, where it'll make his unit stubborn until the start of the next magic phase, and so it's also nice to have some sort of a guy that's going to be making you stubborn. But as we just said, this guy's probably going to be a knight, and if knights are charging in, they probably don't need it anyway. And if you really think that you did need it, you would go and take the knights that already are stubborn, the right guard or whatever they're called, and then take some sort of a character killer that's going to be more dependable. Or you wouldn't even take a character at all. You just charge in with those stubborn knights, kill the character with your lances, and just hold around and chop away with your swords. So, not really interested there. I'd say the worst special character is the one that I saved for last, and this is this Markus Wulfhart. Now, what this guy is he's a special character for your huntsman, and he really kind of turns him into monster hunters. So against monsters, you get to reroll the hit. He has a special bow that's always hitting on a 4+ against monsters, and it does D3 wounds. And of course, this is extremely situational because, first of all, you have to add into this cost the fact that you have to take huntsmen. So if you didn't have huntsmen already, you know, he's kind of forcing you to take them. And the next thing is you have to kind of hope that your opponents have monsters. If they don't have monsters, all these abilities are completely useless. And I mean, even though monsters are getting more popular, let's face it, there's still not a lot of them out there. The last thing here is that when you look at his points, he's 20 more points than a cannon. So either you could take this guy and fiddle around and hope you hit, hope you get the 4+, do a little fiddly D3 wounds, and then you're probably going to get charged and killed. Or you could just take a cannon and shoot the monster and do D6 wounds and be fairly sure you're going to hit and wound. It's just a complete failure of a special character. So there you have it. Here's all the special characters for the book. Most of them, the only good thing I can say about this is, of course, if we did have a special character that was completely over the top, it would be causing a big stir, and then you'd have to worry about if at some of your comp tournaments that maybe he'll be banned or something like that. So at least if you want to take one of these guys because you like his fluff, you like his model, you can do it, and you can be sure that your opponents aren't going to be swearing up a storm about it. But none of them seem very good, especially if you're looking at it from a tactical standpoint. It's just one of those things where the best you're going to get is helping up with some leadership issues, but doing it in a fairly expensive way. So there you have it. There's special characters. As positive as I made the general review of this, unfortunately special characters aren't really part of that. And my third video and last one that's going to be coming up after this is on detachments. And just something to get you guys ready about is that one of the things I'm kind of waiting for is I'm kind of hoping they come up with a really fast FAQ, because depending on how they work, how detachments work with Steadfast, something could be really good or just okay. So there's a little bit of a teaser, and I'll see you next time when I cover that. Thanks, bye.